taking British taxpayers' money, giving it to private companies like Serco, who are outbidding the British people in their own housing market to give more favourable contracts to illegal migrants and asylum seekers. You talk about fairness. My question is, how is that fair?
What you've just watched isn't a debate, and it certainly isn't a discussion. It's a moment where someone finally refuses to let the talking points slide. One direct question, one demand for accountability, and suddenly all the confidence disappears. This matters because this is exactly how power operates now: strong slogans, polished messaging, but the second someone asks who actually pays the price, the whole thing starts to wobble. This wasn't disagreement. This was exposure.
This is not working. Keir Starmer and Labour's plan is riddled with problems, riddled with holes. The small boat numbers as a start are up nearly 50% on the same time last year. They're up nearly 80% on the same time in 2023. We don't have a viable plan. We don't have a deterrent. We're giving too much welfare to people who are breaking our laws. But then we've got Keir Starmer and Labour communications directors in number 10 running around trying to basically mislead the British public. They're basically gaslighting the country, claiming they're getting control of this crisis when they are very visibly not doing so. And to be honest, Michelle, I haven't said this before, I'm actually worried about what Keir Starmer and the Labour government are doing to trust in the system and trust in democracy, because they're claiming they're dealing with this issue, but the numbers are going through the roof, and it's a British taxpayer who is having to pay the associated cost, £15 billion over the next 10 years on hotel and accommodation costs. And Keir Starmer's not being truthful with them about this. Firstly, we learn immigration is the number one issue in this country.
Only because that's the only thing he's told and spoken about.
Okay. So this is what's interesting, Michelle. This is the left narrative.
No, it's not. I'm not the left. Why'd you call me the left?
Can I finish? We're all talking about immigration, and that's the reason.
We're not all talking about immigration.
Can I finish? We're all talking about immigration. That's why immigration is the number one issue, as opposed to it's nothing to do with the record numbers of people who are actually coming into our country. And the second thing we've learned this week is 85% of Brits want net migration reduced below 100,000, and nearly half the country want zero migration. And you're acting as though Keir Starmer is kind of speaking up for this mad, extreme fringe. Most people in this country want less immigration. It's not that hard. That's the British people.
Because that's the telescope right now that's been put on.
That's the British people who are saying we don't want to have to deal with these record numbers of people, many of whom are breaking our laws. And it's the British people who are watching this show who are being asked to pay £15 billion over the next 10 years, $5 million a day for hotels and accommodation. You talk about economics. How about we take that $15 billion by fixing the illegal migration crisis? And how about we have 10 new hospitals for the British people? Why don't we do that?
Pay close attention to what keeps happening here. Every time numbers are mentioned, the argument shifts. When public opinion is raised, it's dismissed as rhetoric. When the cost to taxpayers is laid out, suddenly we're talking about compassion instead of responsibility. This is the trick. Not answering the question, reframing it. Not fixing the problem, moralizing it. And the British public, reduced to an afterthought, expected to fund a system they're not allowed to question.
You endlessly talk about fairness. My question is very simple. What about what is fair for the British people who are supporting this entire system? They are the ones who are having to pay the cost of this. And you're saying we have 160,000 people who have entered this country illegally. Their first act on entering this country is to break the law. Those people should be taken outside of the UK. They should be processed offshore, like the Rwanda plan would have done. It wasn't perfect. It needed changes. We should have processed them offshore, away from the British people, because now we have this absurd situation where this is not fair. The state is now taking British taxpayers' money, giving it to private companies like Serco, who are outbidding the British people in their own housing market to give more favourable contracts to illegal migrants and asylum seekers. You talk about fairness. My question is, how is that fair?
To understand, they are all not criminals. They are all not here living in hotels. They all don't have the benefits like you think. A lot of them are wanting to work. They're just not given the process to do that. They are also needing to...
Do you think they should go out to work?
Well, if they are going through a process and they are actually filling the sort of criteria that meant to be, because at the end of the day, every country has taken a certain amount. I do not think that it should be overly exaggerated with regards to everyone being criminal, everyone here being economic migrants, and they are just here to cause havoc. There are so many of them that are actually also fleeing because of the foreign policies that we have to do.
Safe and legal routes?
Because there are none. They're very vulnerable.
Your starting point is always, what about the rights and the sense of fairness for people who are coming from outside of the country
values
who are breaking our law? I'm sorry,
they're not all breaking the law. They're not all breaking the law.
You live in some fantasy land.
No, you live in a very different land.
The British culture is based on the notion of fair play, which is if people come into the country...
Which is humanitarian as well, refuge. And it's also Christian for you to also not be so hostile like you and talk like you and put everyone in that sort of boat like they are.
300,000 refugees in recent years, and you're sat there saying that we are not humanitarian. What planet are you living on?
I'm saying what you're saying now is not humanitarian.
What, that we should control our own borders? That's not right.
I'm saying that we should obviously control our own borders.
Right.
No one. So am I.
Everyone watching this show.
So am I.
Right. So why should those people be asked to spend billions of pounds every year on a crisis that their leaders refuse to fix?
Well, then it's not their fault. It is the politicians' fault to get it right and to get those processes
let's fix
right.
The crisis.
Yes, the crisis. But don't just blame the sort of migrants that are coming. It is to do with the politicians and people like yourself who are in these kind of, big sort of parties that are putting the blame on the wrong people and the wrong side. It should be fixing policies and making decisions that is also within rights of the humanitarian sort of and international law and looking after the British values. Not to say that, some of them are going to be criminal, but again, you put everyone under.
I'm not going to take lectures on what are British values.
I'm not giving you a lecture. I'm just giving you my point of view, like how you're giving me.
Well, there you go. Two very different points of view. You at home will have a very strong opinion as well. As I just said at the start, you're always welcome to join this conversation.
This wasn't just an interview, and that's the point. This is a pattern you've seen over and over again. You saw it here. You heard it in real time. You felt the hesitation whenever responsibility came too close. When fairness for taxpayers was raised, it was brushed aside. When borders were mentioned, it became an accusation. When accountability appeared, it vanished behind emotion and abstraction. This is why trust is gone. Not because people are cruel, not because they lack empathy, but because they are constantly told to carry the cost while being told to stay quiet. This is a political culture that speaks endlessly about values but refuses to defend the most basic one of all, fairness to the people who fund the system. So ask yourself honestly, is this incompetence, or is it cowardice? And would you trust people like this to run the country? Like the video if you're done with the dodging. Subscribe if you're tired of being talked down to. And hit the bell, because this conversation isn't going away.